Well, joining me now is Erik Fairbairn, founder and chief executive of electric vehicle charging network Pod Point. So, Erik, good evening to you.
Good evening.
How many of these points are we going to need in 2040 then?
So a very large number is the answer, because what you have to remember is that you have a system a bit like a petrol station in the future. In reality, you're charging your car wherever it parks, so predominantly at home, in the workplace, and also in public space as well. But very loosely, I talk about, for every electric car that gets sold, about 1.5 charging points. One at home, certainly, but then a percentage share of workplace charging and a percentage share of charging in the public space. So the number gets quite big.
That's going to be a nightmare, though, isn't it, in the streets?
I don't think it's going to be a nightmare. I think the product that you see in the streets, perhaps around London today, that's not what we're not going to see one of those every other location. You know, we're going to be much more sympathetic to what that looks like. But the reality is, each place you park is going to have the facility to charge your car in the future.
So the government has said today it's going to put up £100 million towards supporting car charging infrastructure. Is that going to be enough?
So I think that's really a small amount versus what we need to do, but it's positive. In reality, the government is not going to fund the mass rollout of electric vehicle charging. It's going to be private enterprises like what I do that are funding this. So I think it's very positive. The government is good at initiating this market, but eventually this is a commercial rollout on commercial terms.
Quite so. So, I mean, what sort of returns are investors going to be looking for to get their money back if they put their money into infrastructure?
Fine. So, I mean, a number of different ways you can fund this in terms of investment, but fundamentally you've got putting an asset model in, and you've got an amount of energy which is provided by that asset. So you end up with a small amount of margin on the energy which is being supplied, is being used to pay for the rollout of that asset base. So it's a fairly, fundamentally well-recognised model of how you roll asset out, but it is fundamentally commercial. I welcome a bit of government investment, but really that's just to get the industry early stage.
Big question, though, this, Erik. We've got, at the moment, the government gets something like 4% of all of its revenues from duty on petrol and diesel sales. It's going to have to replace that. So ultimately, electric cars are going to have to be taxed more, aren't they?
I would agree. I don't see why moving to electric vehicles affects the net tax take. It shouldn't. But obviously, it comes from slightly different areas. So whether in the future we have a bit of tax on electricity for electric vehicles, or whether we move to sort of per mile based charging, or whether we move more to things like the congestion charge, I don't necessarily have the answer of what the tax structure looks like. But I don't see that net it will be any different. The similar tax take will come from the motorist, in my opinion, moving forward.
All right, Erik Fairbairn from Pod Point. Good to see you. Thank you for joining me.